right, welcome everybody. It is April 10th, 2023, and this is our strategic planning meeting. Please let the record reflect that Commissioners Jordan, French, and Kearns are present in the hearing room. Commissioners Waldrop and Cuney are out today. We're going to lead off with Mike Burgess, our county lobbyist, with an update from Olympia.
Morning, Commissioners. How are you all?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Just kind of give you an update where we're at with session. Getting down to it, 2 weeks to go as of, I guess, yesterday. Next major cutoff is the opposite House Policy Committee cutoff. So that is Senate bills out of the House bills out of the Senate that are policy, that don't cost money. And that's on Wednesday at 5. So that's kind of the focus right now. Imagine the House and Senate will both be on the floor pretty late tonight, or late-ish tonight and the next day, and then that 5 p.m. cutoff Wednesday, where we will transition to concurrence. So concurrence means policy bills that were changed in the opposite body have to go back. So if, let's just say, for instance, you have a Senate bill right now, we'll have a few on our list here that are working their way through the House or have already passed the House, but were amended on the House side. They have to go back to the Senate for the Senate to say, yes, we agree with the amendment language, then the bill goes off to the governor. If they don't agree, they'll push it back to the opposite House and say, hey, we, the original body, do not concur, want you to rescind from your position. So bills kind of bounce back and forth. The negotiations will be happening over the next couple of weeks. While all the while they will be negotiating the final budget agreements. That will really start to happen in earnest at the middle of this week on the budget side. A couple of the big kind of moving pieces that are left that are not necessarily county specific, but some of the big stuff that's being worked on. It centers around housing for the most part. That's been kind of a central theme all session. Probably read a lot of news articles about housing and all the different things that have gone on in that area. The bill or the issue, I guess, is being discussed is, you might remember in the pre-session, the governor released a bond he wanted for housing that would go out to a public vote. That's being, I don't want to say it's being pitted against, but that's being considered against another proposal that would increase the REIT on high value properties, but also have a local option component to it that deals with housing. So that's one of the big kind of, I don't know if it's certainly controversial for sure, but largest kind of thing that's hanging out there. And I'm sure you'll be reading and hearing more about that as we get into the middle end of this week and into the following week. On our bill list, we want to switch to that. We'll come back to this agenda because we'll talk about that Blake issue here in a minute. But on our bill list, run through these. None of these are really new to you all, but for maybe a few. 1050 is the apprenticeship utilization bill. It was amended in the Senate in a manner to give the local governments a little bit more flexibility. Going back to the House for concurrence, don't think that there should be an issue for the House to concur in that bill. The next bill on the list is the solid waste management bill. That's the RAP Act. I couldn't remember the last time we talked. The bill's dead. It will be back next session, so I'll remove it from the list now, but just wanted to give you that update. I'm pretty sure we did that the last time we talked, but it's been a few weeks. So wanted to flag that again, let you know that it did not pass the House, but we'll be probably dealing with that again this session. I imagine there'll be some interim work on that. 1181, the climate change bill. This is the GMA climate element bill. This is the one that we've been doing some work on in the with the capital facilities plan language. The bill did pass from the Senate floor last week and included some language that helps deal with the capital facilities plan. I don't want to paint the picture that it's the exact fix that your staff was asking for, but they were in the loop on that. I don't know what I'd say if it was a capital facilities light, but I think there's some relief there that your staff was pleased with. Scott and Jessica specifically, we were in communication last week. So bill needs to go back to the House for its concurrence. I would expect that to happen. The next one, Commissioner Jordan, you had asked me to throw this one on the list, 1355 property tax exemptions for disabled veterans, senior citizens. The bill looks to, by my knowledge, it expands the eligibility, kind of keeps up with inflation and things like that. As I understand it, Commissioner Jordan, there were maybe there's definitely some benefits to some property taxpayers in the county. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that at all, but I will just say that the bill's moving. It's already going to the governor, so it's in really good shape.
I think you summarized it well, and I did talk to Assessor Conus. It sounds like the Assessors Association is working on that, and it seems to be good momentum. So hopefully that continues.
Absolutely. We'll come back to vehicular pursuit because this is the House version that's not in play. So I'll remove it from the list going forward. But like I said, we'll cover that in a minute. 1460 was the bill dealing with the DNR lands. This was one that Commissioner Waldrop in particular had an interest in, that we added onto our list about 6 weeks ago. It has passed the Senate, does need to go back to the House for concurrence. Next one, 1515 is the behavioral health contracts priority legislation for the Association of Counties. It provides some flexibility in those contracts that are negotiated. It needs to go back to the House for concurrence, but it's in good shape. The state broadband map bill needs a floor vote on the Senate side. So again, that needs to happen by Wednesday. Next one at the top of page 2, 5057. This was the bill that created the work group to deal with the energy efficiency requirements from the state. As I think you'll remember, the bill did not pass. I've left it there though, as kind of a flag because there's the possibility of this kind of work group language being worked into the capital budgets. So that's something that will be negotiated in the budget language. But I'm going to keep this one on the list as kind of a reminder that we're still working on that issue.
Mike, is that the bill that included language for the study on the waste energy plant?
No, Commissioner, it's not.
Okay.
That would be operating budget.
Okay.
So I'm writing this one down. That's a good note for me to check on.
Yeah, because that'll have an impact on our ratepayers here.
Absolutely. I remember we talked about this weeks ago, and there was thought maybe of a standalone bill, but the plan was to do a budget proviso. So I will check on that for you and have an answer by next week.
Okay.
The prejudgment interest bill, again, we've talked about this a bit, has the potential for some cost impacts to the county. It has not moved from the Senate Ways and Means Committee, but it is something, the kind of bill that might pop up at the end. So we'll leave that on the list. The mobile home community sales has already been signed by the governor. It does include that language we needed to exempt you from the activities you're doing with the mobile home purchases and moving folks away to comply or to help protect the base. Condo liability bill 5258 did move out of the Senate. It's exempt from cutoff. It does need to have a House hearing. So there's a lot of folks asking for that bill, passed the Senate unanimously. So we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening in the House Appropriations Committee. Next is the vehicular pursuit bill. Needless to say, very controversial issue this year, getting a lot of publicity. It needs a floor vote on Wednesday at 5. I have not heard what the majority in the House plans to do with the bill yet. The 5369 is the PCB bill. Was actually changed quite a bit in the House, but not necessarily in a way that would in any way negatively impact the county. I think it's a good bill for the county. So that does need to go back to the Senate for concurrence, which I would anticipate to happen. 5440. Well, let's come back to that because that's the kind of the other language I had on the agenda sheet. So we'll come back to that one. The county commissioner's salary bill has already been signed by the governor. That's kind of a quick run through of the bills that we have talked about throughout session. Do you have any questions on any of those items or maybe some others that I didn't cover? Okay. If we go back to the front page agenda, Ron, that's you, right? Thank you. On Saturday, commissioners, you might have seen in your inbox a call to action request from the Association of Counties dealing with the response to Senate Bill 5536. This is the Blake bill, as it's been called, the response to the Blake decision. Lots of moving pieces in that bill. But one of concern specifically to Wasatch deals with this issue surrounding the navigator programs. And frankly, commissioners, I'm not hugely familiar with that. But you can read the narrative here that was put in the email to you on Saturday. I just included it here. If you want to take a quick second and read through that. It comes from Juliana at the association who covers this issue. And then there's an ask that has been made of me and us, you, the county, moving forward. So if you want to take, I'll give you 40 seconds there to read through that real quick. Need another second, or you want me to keep going?
I need a few more seconds.
Okay, sure. Just tell me when.
All right, Mike.
Okay, so it's a lot to digest there, commissioners. But I think the long and the short of it is that that passage of that bill in 2021 set in place work that I believe your county has already been doing. And the concern with this amendment language is it has the potential to shift what the county has already been doing to a different kind of model that's called LEAD. And Wasatch's concern with that is there's real questions about how effective that will be. So the ask of us, and this was in that narrative there, was to work with the legislature to ask for a WISIP study of this LEAD, I don't know if I call it program. And the WISIP is the Washington State Institute for Public Policy. It's a nonpartisan group that reviews different measures that the legislature puts out that have cost impacts. So the hope is that the legislature would include this WISIP study to get at the effectiveness and which is the best way to go about this kind of treatment for folks moving forward, and not want to undo the work that was done in 5476. That's a oversimplification of it. But I think the goal here is to make sure that the work that you might have already been doing in your county isn't undone. And it's going to be done the most effectively. So that's why the idea here is to have a study done to analyze which is the best way to go forward. But again, commissioners, I'm pretty unfamiliar with how this has been implemented at the county. Commissioner Jordan, given how new you are, I don't know if Commissioner Kearns or French, if you can speak on that so I can learn more about it, that'd be really helpful too.
The BHASO stuff is very confusing. I mean,
Yes.
I'll be upfront. I mean, even for us, it's very, very confusing. But I mean, I guess my question with this is, I mean, so this sort of call to action just came out over the weekend. Did they just realize this was going to be an issue? I mean, because it's already gone through the Senate. It's gone through that. It's in rules in the House now.
It was amended as a bill left appropriations, Commissioner. So it was at the last
Out of
step.
committee. It got amended out of committee.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this was, so you make a good point that, you know, we've gone a long way through the process and all of a sudden this amendment language shows up that kind of changed things pretty significantly in the bill that give rise to this concern and point towards the need to analyze this other option.
Well, I mean, as I read through this, I mean, if this is an honest assessment of what's going on, I mean, turning the BHASOs into sort of a pass-through entity, but for some of the smaller communities, they're passing it through to an entity that is themselves. And then, I mean, with the issue of keeping straight the commingling of funds, which is referenced in the last paragraph, I mean, this seems like a strong argument on why this isn't a good bill, but I mean, is this just going to be sort of the issue where it's sort of larger counties versus smaller counties sort of mindset that it's going to roll through on that, or?
No, Commissioner, I think there's some motivated legislators that would like to see this new language stay in that's caused the call to action from WASAC. And again, what's on this paper, I didn't write this and there's no way I can take credit for that. But it's a specific ask from WASAC. So it's not a larger county versus smaller county. It's the county association in general asking for this analysis to be done. I think ideally they would like this language that's in this section 26 of the bill to go back to the way it was before it was amended in appropriations. But I think that there's an acknowledgement that maybe that can't happen. And so as maybe a fallback would be to have this study language in to analyze this moving forward, to not undo, as what you mentioned, this whole pass-through idea that would kind of be a new conceptually.
So we did have a conversation about this earlier on at LSC, and I think if I had to create a synopsis of it, I'd say the analysis was shoot, fire, aim is the concern. That there doesn't seem to be a real clear path forward. There just seems to be energy to spend money and build an organization without any prescribed outcomes. So I think there's one lack, there's confusion about what the ultimate goal is, but more importantly, does this fix anything, or is this just more government and stuff? So I get the sense that that's kind of where some of us are at.
Commissioner, I think that's a pretty fair synopsis of the arguments I've heard as well. But again, acknowledging this is really complicated stuff. But given that it's coming through the Association of Counties and the folks I have talked to that work this issue area closely, they had reached out to me on Saturday morning saying, hey, we need Spokane to help us on this one. So I wanted to make you aware. And part of that's given who our legislators are in our region. We have some real key players in the process right now. That the hope was that the county would hear, or those legislators would hear from the county on this one.
Can we somehow get Justin Johnson's take on this?
He'd be the one that would know. Yeah.
Well, Commissioner, sorry, I would have requested for him to be in there, but again, this all came on Saturday morning. So, and given the holiday yesterday, is there a way commissioners, you can speak with him this morning and let me know what the outcome is.
So we're coming back at 2. What's your afternoon look like around
So
2:30?
I can probably do that, commissioners. It depends. I've got a couple bills I'm working on the floor that I'd like to be in the rotunda for. But if you just email me or somebody texts me and says, hey, can you do it at 2:30? Even if I just call in to listen, that could be, I hope.
Gina, what were you saying?
Oh,
How long Scott queued up for?
it's gonna take an hour and a half.
Oh, okay. So maybe 3:30? Would that be better for you later in the day?
Yeah, sorry, Commissioner, you know how it goes. I just can't predict
Yeah.
obviously what they're gonna end
Well-
up doing, but I'll do my best to accommodate whatever. Just let me know when.
All right, well, we will have Gina shoot you a text or an email.
Okay.
We'll make it work.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner.
Just gonna ask, so it's Senate Bill 5536, Mike, that we wanna have Justin take a look at?
Yeah, specifically, Scott's a huge bill, so you're gonna wanna have him look at section 26.
Section 26, okay?
But then, can you forward him this narrative here?
Yep.
Because let me look real quick. I got a different email that I didn't give to you all.
So I missed the call to action from Juliana. Was she wanting us in support or opposition to the
ask is for us to support the request for the WISIP study.
Okay,
So the study of kind of this transition to kind of a new form, a new way of doing things, as opposed to doing specifically that was in Senate Bill 5476 that was passed in 2021.
okay.
So the question, I think, for the county is, would this have the potential to undo work you've already done? This other entity, I think there's some unknowns about it, as has been explained to me.
Justin just zoomed in actually.
Oh, we've got Justin with us.
Oh, sweet.
Right on the spot. That's good. Good morning. What do you think about this?
Are you with us?
Good morning,
Justin?
everyone.
There.
I
Hi,
apologize.
Justin. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I was actually just on with our lobbyist, ESL lobbyist, talking about this. Questions? Anything specific?
Well, Commissioners, you want me to kind of summarize what I've been told? Is that okay?
Take it away, Mike.
So, Justin, I shared with the commissioners the WASAC call to action that I assume you were on with Brad this morning, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so Brad and I talked Saturday about this and had asked that I speak with the commissioners about supporting a WISIP study for the impact of switching or the legislature looking at going to this lead process instead. So is that enough for you to kind of go from there? And did you see the WASAC call to action?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that's on the screen there too. I assume you can see that. So anyway, please fill in any blanks that I probably left.
Yeah, it sounds like the impetus for this really is Representative Davis from King County, who has been talking to the lead national bureau based out of Seattle, who's been pushing an agenda to run or oversee the management of the RNP programs. And when this was initially passed, the idea was not to be lead, or it was meant to be lead-like. So the control would rest within the regions that the RNP program was implemented. However, with this most recent striker from Representative Davis, it sounds like they're listening to some of this King County Bureau and pushing for them to have total control over not only implementation, but the aspect of it. So really, I think the challenge here is it would remove control essentially from the ASO and the county to lead to basically administer and run administratively, and then we would just be a pass-through entity. And that's the challenge. The model was based and created out of King County, and lead Lisa Dugard, which was from, I don't know if everyone's familiar with her. She's one of the biggest pushers of this. She helped create LEAD in the LEAD Bureau, came from the ACLU, and she was a lead defender in King County. She is really wanting to remove that and focus more on having a very specific model that she created be implemented around the state. And when we asked about the specific input that was being received to kind of guide this language, apparently the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs was not consulted as part of this, and neither were the regions where this was being implemented. So there's a lot of concerns regarding why all of a sudden now this was added in at the last minute, and also who is leading this change in the language and why at the last hour. And apparently this was not shared with everyone in the Senate, who may not also express the same level of interest or knowledge about why this occurred at the last minute. So we're kind of hearing back channel information, and I would defer to Mike on this, on the conversations, what's happening at the Hill there. But it really does sound like the Representative Davis is the one pushing this because of other agenda in King County.
That's correct, but Justin, to be clear, when you talk about King County, you mean they're located there, but this is not like a King County government priority.
Yes, I apologize. This is
Yeah.
specific to being designated and creating King County, but not King County specific.
Right.
I know Arian is with us, and I know she was a big part of when we stood up the BHASOs. Do you have something to add on this, Arian?
Hi, good morning, commissioners. This is Arian. Actually, nothing on the BHASO, but because Justin wasn't in his position at the time, this had significant impacts on our Regional Stabilization Center. And I think that although that operates in tandem with the BHASO, 5476 in 2021 completely altered the diversion aspect. But to Justin's point, having the requirements centralized at the state would really hamstring the county as well as our provider to not do the deliverables that we know are making impacts. We would then be beholding to whatever the state entity is requiring. And we've had, I don't know, Justin, half a dozen visits because our stabilization center is the only one of its kind, and it's actually doing the things that community wants. And I think there's some concerns that if we let go of the control, we're not going to be able to put those true key performance indicators and service delivery in facilities of that sort. So I just wanted to add that to Justin, because the stabilization facility kind of operates outside of the BHASO, but is really a neural network to it, along with the behavioral health units of all of our law enforcement agencies.
It sounds like Commissioner Jordan?
Can anyone explain what this lead concept is, just for awareness of what the goal is?
Yeah, so the LEAD model is a law enforcement assisted diversion, so LEAD. And it is a evidence-based model that has certain expectations or goals to achieve. So all evidence-based practice really looks at is there is a process and then there is an end goal to achieve, and it has to hit those measures, right? So there is from start to finish a measurement throughout that period. But since it was created by this specific group, the LEAD Bureau, their focus and attention has been on assisting law enforcement essentially on diverting people away from the court-based or criminal legal system, and they believe should be the pathway that all individuals go. With Lisa's Dugard's experience both with the ACLU and with the Public Defenders Association, there is a specific direction she believes law enforcement should be taking for most individuals engaged in the system. So that's where LEAD came from and how it's being utilized. There's a lot of great aspects of it, but because it's so specific in how it's implemented, unfortunately, there is no wiggle room. To meet that model, you have to achieve a certain goal. One of those is that most diversion have to come from law enforcement. So essentially, law enforcement would be, and this is where it's unclear to me, Mike, forced to refer individuals, and or the vast majority would have to come from them and not the community or other areas. That's the challenge. How do you force law enforcement in a bill to use this avenue when it should just be a choice and or another tool in their belt?
Right.
And that's where RMP is currently.
Yeah, and so Justin's right. I mean, I think it's telling too that the association here in Olympia that represents law enforcement didn't know about this. It, just logically is problematic. The other thing too is, I don't think the claim is that LEAD's terrible or that it's bad. I think that what the ask here is amendment language to study the outcomes and to take a look at it to make sure, because, and again, it's probably oversimplifying, but maybe it hasn't been properly vetted yet on the impacts that it might have to what the county is already doing. And Justin, is that kind of a fair assessment, fair way to say it?
Yes, and it would remove what it currently is in place across all of our region. So not only would it not going down this path potentially provide not a clear information about how the service is provided, but it would then stop what we're doing and force another route, potentially limiting our ability to do services.
Yeah, and then remember, commissioners, too, that this is, again, sections 26 of the bill. So obviously there's at least 26 sections. There's more than that, but this is the Blake kind of solution bill. So there is a pressure and a desire to get this bill passed to deal with these, the sentencing and possession and all those things that were associated with the Blake decision. So it's not as simple as just kill the bill. So the idea here is, again, get this study language plugged in to make sure that the state, and more importantly, you all are able to make the right decisions. And this is properly looked at.
Well, do we want to have a letter from the board stating our position that we agree with Wasak's study? Or, I mean, is that what you're recommending, is the study,
so
or do we push to strip
commissioners,
out what was put in?
In a simple world, we would just ask for that study, and yes, a very simple letter from the board would be wonderful. I would also probably be contacting some of you commissioners individually. I'd have to think through who and when, but I'd want to do this pretty soon. So if we can turn this around quickly, that would be great.
Okay,
You want a motion?
yeah, let's do that. We'll do that, and then
Are you comfortable?
What's that?
Are you comfortable
study?
making, yeah,
Yeah, I think diversion is really important.
Yeah.
From a policy perspective, especially in this context of Blake. So I can't say that I am opposed to what the goal is, but I do have significant concerns about the process of adding big changes at the end without informing law enforcement if they're the folks that are supposed to carry this out. So I think a study would be a wise step, and I'm not comfortable with last second surprises. It just doesn't seem like that's the way to bring folks along and have a well-designed policy, so.
you don't like surprises either,
No.
way to go. All right, Mr. Vice Chair, I would make a motion that we draft and sign, and other than open public meeting, a letter to Wasac in support of the Wasac's position with regard to pursuing the WISIP study, and to be signed and other than open public meeting.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second, so I will open it up for public comment. Anybody wishing to testify, wishing to testify or comment on the motion? If you're joining us on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. If you're joining us by phone, please press *9. Second call for anybody wishing to testify on the motion on the floor. Third and final call. Give a few more seconds just in case. All right, seeing nobody wishing to testify. I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, 3-0.
So
Okay.
commissioners, I'll help get the verbiage of what would be contained in the letter. Is that fair?
I think that's great. Jared?
I'll get it to Jeff as quick as I can today.
Jeff and Jared?
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll work with Jeff.
Okay.
All right, I'll send it to both of them. And then the last thing, commissioners, is more informational. That was the third attachment there, Ron, that I sent. It's a capital budget list, kind of side by side. We definitely don't want to run through this item by item right now. But there, thanks, Ron. So it's it's a little difficult to read, because you can't just grab just the legislative districts that are in Spokane or whichever region of the state you want to, but I just thought you'd find it informative to scroll through this. So do this at your leisure. This is every capital budget project that is in the third. And if you scroll down further, you get to the fourth, the sixth, the seventh, and the ninth. Just for information's purposes, you can see what the differences were between the two. There's some, well, actually, Ron, if you could hold right there. So there's a good example. You got the Spokane Civic Theater with 1.5 million. I think the House is the first column, wasn't in the Senate budget. So that's something that will need to be reconciled. But again, just purely informational. Once the session is over with, and the final budget's negotiated, I'll send you the same document so you can see what the final outcome was. So again, purely informational. Other than that, that's all I got, and I'll get to work on this letter and get that coordinated and get it to Jeff and Jared as soon as I can.
All right, any final questions for Mike? Okay, thanks for joining us today,
Thanks.
Mike.
All right, have a good day. Bye.
You too. Okay, we've been joined by Albert Tripp. Albert, how you doing?
Doing well, how are you?
Okay, doing wonderful. So who's gonna lead off on this? Is it
I'm happy to
lead
start.
off? Okay,
And you have a copy of the presentation.
we do.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning to talk a bit about the annexation into the Spokane Library District. The City of Prairie Heights and the Library District are working on. We want to share a little context around both entities, the district and the city, and then also unpack our thinking around the request. We'll discuss a little bit of the process in terms of the state statutes that guide and direct this process as well. So move to the next slide. A little context about Prairie Heights. For those that aren't aware, it's a code city that was established in 1955, full service city in the sense that it provides a variety of different municipal services. 7-member councils all voted at large, and our budget for 2023 is about $14.6 million on the general fund side. Next slide, please.
Patrick Rowe, Spokane County Library District Executive Director. Nice to be here this morning. So the Library District was established by a vote of the people in 1942. Of course, you all appoint our trustees. Thank you for doing that work. It's easier to talk about who we don't serve than who we do. So we serve the entirety of the county with the exceptions of the city of Spokane and the city of Liberty Lake, which each have their own library systems. We have 10 brick and mortar locations and our mobile library services fleet. About $18 million budget this year, and then you can see some of our numbers in terms of service in 2022 there. The next slide, please. In terms of service, we've provided library services in Prairie Heights since 1990. Our current building was built there in 1997. The service contract is via an interlocal agreement with the city of Prairie Heights. The annual service fee is based upon applying the district's tax levy rate to the assessed valuation of property within the city, and then that contract fee is paid out by the city's general operating fund. So it's the same amount, whether it's the same amount as a levy with the rest of the district, but just it's paid via the city rather than directly assessed to the taxpayer. Next slide. In terms of the annexation process, it's governed by state law. You can see the SCW references there. Somewhat unique in that it requires action by 3 governing bodies to put it on the ballot. So first, a city adopts an ordinance requesting annexation to the library district. The library district concurs. They vote on a supporting resolution, which is then submitted to the county commissioners, asking that a special election be placed on the ballot. It's a simple majority vote. The ballot language is dictated by the state law, so you'll see in the blue box there. That's the language to be used on the ballot question. And then just for reference, historically, we've had the last 2 annexations to the district was the town of Spangle in 2008 and the city of Spokane Valley in 2005, both of which were successful. In terms of the annexation timeline, go back one. Thanks. So Albert reached out in February to kind of start the conversation. And then both the city and then the district passed the ordinance and resolution in March. We've brought it here to you for consideration. And then the last day for resolution for the August primary is May 12th. August 1st is the election day. And then if it were to successfully pass, The effective date is January 1st, 2025, so it's a year plus off. That's because of RCW 8409030 basically says you have to have any changes to the taxi district boundaries have to be done by August 1st of the year prior. Since this won't be certified until mid-August, it won't meet the deadline for 2024.
If the annexation is approved, the library will assess the levy rate to property owners as opposed to Airway Heights, utilizing its regular property tax levy to pay for the services. 2023 rate for the library district is 34 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. And with the amount Airway Heights currently has for a levy rate of $1.43, we'll take that difference and continue to retain it and use it for public safety services. And property owners, as Patrick noted, wouldn't see a change to their property tax until 1st of 2025. Next slide, please. Our thinking and rationale behind the specific need and the desire to annex into the district as opposed to continuing to use a regular property tax levy to cover these services is that within the community, we've seen 35% growth over the last decade. Our collection of property tax, it's been around about $1.43 of assessed value. Meanwhile, emergency medical service calls, those have skyrocketed. Those are greatly increasing. And as most of you know, cities are limited to 1% increase in property tax on an annual basis. So we're looking for funding on how to both maintain library services as well as meet the growing needs on the public safety side as well. And this will provide an opportunity to do both. The last bullet there is just an illustration of a typical property owner based on a $300,000 assessed value. The impact to the property owner would be $102 a year or $850 based on the district's current levy rate. The next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation. We welcome any questions.
Any questions?
When would this be on the commissioner's agenda for vote, for approval? Do we know?
The first step is going to be, there's a resolution set for next Tuesday to acknowledge receipt of the request under 2712-360. Following that, we could prepare the resolution for the special election, special ballot measure.
Commissioner French?
So they've got to be in a position to where they can put this on the ballot by May 12th. And so, and it takes 3 entities. So you have the library district and the city of, so we are the last of the 3 to be able to, okay. I just wanted to find out, is there anybody else that's standing in the way? So if we took this action next Monday, 17th, right? We meet their timeline and we meet our timeline?
The first action that we have prepared a resolution for next week is to acknowledge receipt, which is the first step. We've acknowledged that the request has been made, and then thereafter, the board wants to move forward, we can prepare the second resolution and put that on, as I would say, as early as the following week. So that would be
The following week, we're in DC.
First of May.
So it's the 1st of May.
Well, I mean, my offices could have it ready for next week if that's what the board would like.
Well, I guess that's where I was driving to, is can we do both of them next week and
Yeah,
just be done with it?
Yeah, legally, there's no reason we can't. If that's what the board would like, we can prepare the other one and have them both on the agenda for next week.
That would be my request.
Okay, I have no problem with that.
Can you say it one more time? Sorry. What was your
So
request?
there's 2 steps, 1 to acknowledge we received the request, and then 2 to agree to it. And instead of having those done in 2 separate weeks, just combine them together and do both of them next Monday.
Yeah.
That way we don't,
For Tuesday?
or Tuesday, yeah, and that way we don't, drag it out for another couple of weeks and give them time to prepare what they need to do for the ballot to get it filed.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay?
We'll have that ready for next week.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
joining us. Yeah. Okay, next up, there he is, Larry Crowder, CEO of Spokane International Airport. So Larry, looks like you've got a couple different items you're gonna touch on, so I'll hand it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner, and good morning, Commissioners. I'm sorry that I couldn't attend in person. We had an early morning report here at Spokane International to assist with the Inland Northwest Honor Flight this morning. You may be familiar with Inland Northwest Honor Flight. They have a mission to transport our Inland Northwest veterans to Washington, D.C. to visit the monuments and memorials that have been dedicated to their service and sacrifice. And on this morning's flight, you would have been really moved to see we had one World War II veteran, we had 6 Korean War veterans, and 92 Vietnam War veterans that are all headed to DC. The airplane is just pushing back now. And so they have a whirlwind tour, and they will return home tomorrow night, where we will give them a very enthusiastic greeting upon their arrival. So I apologize for not being able to be there in person, but I thought you would like to know what we were up to this morning.
That is absolutely an acceptable reason for not being here, Larry.
Thank you, Commissioner Kearns. I appreciate that. As you had pointed out, Commissioner Kearns, I do have 3 items this morning to brief the commissioners on. First is a city utility easement. The second is a conveyance of right-of-way to Spokane County for the Craig Road improvements. And then the third is a sale of approximately 63 acres of surplus airport property. So we'll take the first one, and I appreciate Ron Valencia being good on the assist there. Thank you, sir. The next slide, please. This is just to give you a location of where the easement will be and what it is in support of. And the upper part of the box, you can see 2 water reservoirs that were built many years ago in the 30s and 40s by the city of Spokane, and they are currently constructing a new water reservoir in that area to increase their ability to serve the growing West Plains Airport area. Next slide, please, Ron. This is a little bit better view focused in on where those 2 water reservoirs are located now. In 2021, the county commissioners and city council approved the sale of about 3 acres of property to the city of Spokane in support of the construction of the 3rd water reservoir. And as part of that purchase and sale agreement, we agreed that within a period of time after closing that we would negotiate this no-cost utility easement. And there is language in the interlocal agreement that provides for no-cost easements when we are able to grant them to the city. And in this case, we are. Next slide, please. This is the approximate route of the utility easement. You can see that it moves roughly south to north from Geiger Boulevard across the airport property to Pilot Drive, down Pilot Drive to Waypoint Boulevard, and then into the city's land area. And the approximate area of that easement's a little bit over 2 acres. Next slide, please. So we would request the concurrence by the county commissioners in the easement document to the city of Spokane. And I'm happy to answer any questions on that before we move to the next item.
So I will just share knowledge that I gained last week from Kyle Tuig, that this water tower reservoir is the largest in the city, but it's also extremely efficient and can drive development on the West Plains for quite a while to provide water and stuff. So is that fairly accurate?
It's one of the largest of that style.
That style, okay. Okay, so just critical to continued growth in the West Plains.
Okay, continue, Larry.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kearns. The next item is an item we've been working very closely with the county on to prepare conveyance of property in the form of right-of-way, a border easement, and slope easement to support improvements to Craig Road. And you can see here the limits of the conveyance, roughly running north to south on Craig Road and encompassing a bypass of the current Craig and Thorpe intersections to get rid of those two 90-degree turns and to make traffic flow smoother up into this growing area. You can also see the transload facility, the T-shaped development just north of Thorpe and east of Craig in terms of how does this project relate to airport property and the transload. Next slide, please. This is just a closer in view of the most significant element of the project from our perspective, which is the construction of that bypass of Craig and Thorpe, those two intersections, and then bypassing those residential properties in that area. Next slide, please. This is the table prepared just to show our work to you that we prepared in cooperation with the county staff. The conveyance will total a little over 9.5 acres in these three forms that you see in the table. And lots of details on this slide. I think the most important is that we will be conveying this property for $1, recognizing that the county is coming through making a very considerable investment that we believe will provide enhanced value to the currently vacant airport property that is surplus to our needs located in and around the truck rail transload facility. There's a whole bunch of other details there around closing periods. I'll just say that our intention is to move very quickly to closing so that the county can move forward, knowing that it has this right-of-way, border and slope easements all secured in order to move into construction.
Yeah, and I think this project is teed up to be in construction this year. We will be out to bid, and it should be a fairly short construction period, maybe, well, I don't want to predict what their timing is and stuff, but the only question I have, is there any movement on the purchase price? No, I'm just kidding.
You drive a hard bargain.
This is a great partnership between the airport and the county. We don't have to buy land, so we can invest it in infrastructure.
Thank you. I think we have one more slide just to relate the project and its importance to the overall airport area and West Plains area. You can see that this area is located inside of the Public Development Authority boundary, obviously near the rail truck transload as we discussed, but also facilitates access into the land around the truck transload facility that is also part of an opportunity zone. So there's a lot of real benefit to this project in terms of safety and efficiency and capacity as it relates to job growth and business development on the West Plains. Thank you. The last item that we have to brief commissioners today is the sale of surplus airport property to OFPAV LLC. Next slide, please, Rob. Here's the general location of that land sale. You can see that it is west of Craig Road and located across the street, basically from the transload facility. Next slide, please. And this is the second sale of land in that vicinity. In 2020, the county and the city approved the sale of 38.46 acres of surplus airport property. And then you can see how this next sale of about a little over 63 acres relates to those lots. Next slide, please. Details around the sale that are salient is the 63.27 acres. The purchase price is $2,370,195.43, or basically about 86 cents per square foot, little over $37,000 per acre. All of that will be trued up when we complete a boundary survey of the property. So that may fluctuate slightly at closing. There are a number of other items in the purchase and sale agreement that are pretty standard to the purchase and sale agreements that you've seen in the past. There are opportunities for the buyer to extend, which they have to pay for, and then ancillary agreements, and survival period of 9 months, and a post-closing liability cap of 10%, all of which we've had in prior purchase and sale agreements. There's no broker involved in this transaction, so there will not be a brokerage fee. And the land has already been released from all federal aviation obligations previously. Happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions for Larry? Commissioner Jordan?
Hi, Larry. Can you help me when you have conveyances or sales, the process for this happening, and does it the relationship between the airport board and the county commissioners, just how that works?
Absolutely, Commissioner. The relationship is that any time that we have to buy or sell property based on the interlocal agreement, we have to come back and receive that authorization from the Board of County Commissioners and from the Spokane City Council.
Okay.
And then just an added point that all proceeds remain at the airport for use for airport operating or capital projects.
So you're having the same conversations with city council concurrently?
That's correct.
Thank you.
What date do we have this queued up for us to approve?
This could come forward as early as next week, depends on when Larry has all the documents over to us. And I assume you do the city first, Larry, is that right?
We try to, Scott. Right now, we're teed up into the city process starting today as well. So we would get those documents concurrently to you this week, expecting city council approval probably in 2 weeks.
And Council President Brian Biggs is also on the airport representing the city and is the one that's pushing this through the city council and stuff, so he's in full support of it as well. And then just as an adjunct here, the other joint effort that we do with the city is that we have a joint appointment to the airport board. And that joint appointment is being offered up by the city of Spokane to be a reappointment of Nancy Voorhees, who's the current chair for the airport board and has been on the airport board for, I think, 1.5 or 2 terms.
Yes, sir, that's correct. 2 terms, and in her 3rd term. So I think it'll be close to 8 years that she's served, if not a little longer.
And she was originally appointed because she was the past president, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Larry, for Life Flight out at Fields Field. And because she was a tenant representing it, or because she was representing a tenant, that's why she's the joint appointment and stuff. So we have that teed up for us as well. Her current term expires the end of this month, so.
If you haven't initialed yet, out there on the counter
Yeah.
is the form, so.
Okay.
That concludes all of the items that I had, Commissioner Kearns.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're trying to, because the council is scheduled to take an action on this tonight, we're trying to tee this up for tomorrow so we can get it out of the way before we go to DC. So,
The board appointment?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, her term expires.
Term expires tomorrow, so that's the timing, that's the urgency.
You can initial today.
Yeah,
There's only one
Message
applicant.
received, Mr. Vice Chair.
no pressure at all, but can I borrow your pen?
You go step out there right now.
Yeah.
You want me to bring it in for you?
Okay, thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you, commissioners. I really appreciate your support and teamwork as always.
All right.
Thank you.
Next up, we have been joined by Alicia Benson and Gary Ballou. Give us a GSI update. Okay.
Well, good morning. Nice to see all of you. Happy Monday. I hope you had a good Easter. Thanks for having us. I know first and foremost, Gary, I want to start with a thank you for reapproving our ADO designation for the next biennium. Thank you very much. I look forward to continuing to do great work together. I'm going to step through a couple of slides. Gary's going to take the bulk of it around the economic development pieces, which we know you all have lots of questions on, but again, just wanted to start with a big thank you. Also a thank you on renewing the contract, but then it goes alongside that so we can continue to do that work. Just as a reminder, especially as you have new commissioners, just as a reminder too, that we actually recognize the county based on your total investment to the organization. So you're one of our regional visionary investors, which is fantastic. And that includes then having you decide as you go through your process, one of your commissioners that then sits on our executive committee as well. And so this year is Commissioner CUNY, last year was Commissioner French, and so that happens each year. So just a big thank you on that front and that engagement, because that's our inner circle of folks as we go about making lots of decisions day in and day out. We can step through the slides. I think you're all relatively familiar with this, but certainly I always like to make sure people are reminded on what our mission is on behalf of the region to lead transformative business and community initiatives that build a robust economy and making sure that we build a vibrant Spokane region. You can go to the next slide, please. We do work, so your contract structured in this way as well. So we do work thinking about greater growth, greater voice, and greater talent. So thinking about economic development across the board, thinking about talent and workforce from the earliest all the way through adult re-engagement and retraining. And then we do work in the public policy environment, local, state, and federal level from a greater voice perspective. Next slide, please. A couple of things on talent. So when we talk about talent, again, we're looking at that whole entire pipeline of workforce and education. We did, so just in this past year, from a kind of a grounding, we hired a new VP of Education and Talent, Dr. Christy Carter. She's there on the left in the screen. And then we received additional dollars. So GSI, as the regional ADO, has also then served as the regional career connected learning and regional Spokane STEM network for the last decade. So we're doing work with not just Spokane County. It actually covers those networks cover 10 counties in eastern Washington, supporting workforce pathways and training from elementary all the way up and through. And so we receive funding in a few different ways from the state to support that work as well. And so part of that led the opportunity to bring on a new employee, Matthew, who joined us here last fall, focused particularly on the 18 plus population. So as we look and we think about needs coming out of the pandemic, a lot of impacts to the existing workforce. And so thinking about worker retraining and engagement. So a lot of partnership work that goes on in that space. So that's something different from previous. And then the work that really continues focused through those efforts, working to both expose students, families, educators across the region into the high industry sector growth areas that make sense here in the region. You can go to the next slide. And then obviously I know you had a large legislative briefing this morning as well, so you're all very familiar. You all spent time with us in Olympia. You'll be with us in Washington, D.C. in a couple of weeks. So I'm not going to belabor this one other than to say, much like you all know, it has been quite a session and plenty to work on between now and then. From an ADO perspective, we've spent actually the last 2 weeks doing a lot of defense and ensuring that the base maintenance level funding for ADOs stays in the budget, which it has now. We had been pushing forward additional state funding to support ADOs that would have been able to support projects when we think about business expansion, business accelerator services, those kinds of things. That was an additional $10 million grant program. Right now that is on the cutting board, but doing some work to hopefully see if we can get a couple million dollars for the ADO network. So that would be all of the ADOs across the state. And you'll hear when you talk with Gary, when Gary talks, we're trying to always look for tools that can be additional tools that we can use in the local business community to help business expansion and retention efforts. And then we did have a couple of big wins, particularly on the workforce side, which we're excited. Nurse licensure compact, something that we've been working on for a decade, is moving forward, as well as some medical assistance phlebotomy related certification issues. So when we really look at the density of the workforce here in this Spokane region, healthcare workforce is significant, and we have a lot of licensure challenges for that workforce here. So a couple of big wins, and we're hopeful that condo liability pieces, as we know, is important for all of you on the housing pieces, and then certainly the pieces around the north-south will stay moving forward. So looking forward to a great trip to DC in a couple of weeks, so we can talk more about that or answer any questions. And so with that, I'll hand it off to Gary to jump into some of the work in economic development.
So this is our greater growth team. So Stacia Rasmussen, Joey Gunning, Alicia Rodell, and George Wagner, and then myself. We'll talk a little bit about life sciences, the SEDS work, PTAC, but I wanted to talk, and the commission asked us to focus on Advantage Spokane and our outbound marketing work. So we have a number of slides at the end. So I'll cover these first ones pretty quickly. We can go next slide. So this is the slide that we actually had at our last. These are our ADO metrics for that are with our state contract. This is the 2022, the year-end 2022 results and how we're doing on those ADO metrics. You can go to the next slide. So life science and evergreen bio, this is Stacia Rasmussen, who's our life science specialist manager, excellent project manager. So during 2022, we got a $500,000 grant from Department of Commerce at the state level to do an innovation cluster, which is called the Evergreen Biosciences Innovation Cluster. And as part of that work, we also assembled together $150,000, including a contribution from the county, and we appreciate and thank that, to do an asset, what we call an asset mapping study in life sciences, specifically looking at other life science clusters, successful ones like Austin, Salt Lake City, and then comparing that to Spokane. What do we have? What do we not have? What do we need? What do we reasonably get? What's the next 5 years going to look like? And what's our need? One specific question is what is our need for wet lab space? That work is just getting underway. We just hired a consultant to do that, had the first trip, and then the state is really looking at innovation clusters overall as a way to have economic development throughout the state. So there's 9 innovation clusters out there, and we're one of those. And as part of that, Stacia was able to go to a trip. They're modeled after innovation clusters in Finland and Norway and the Nordic countries. So she was able to go and see some samples of those. Next slide, please. SEDS work wrapped up in 2022, our Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy update. Our first really in-depth look at that, a community-wide effort. We have wrapped up in June, and so now we've been doing the implementation. We have over 90 organizations, 90 people in 65 organizations who have different parts of the SEDS. The SEDS is a very, it is comprehensive, so it has a lot of subject matter in that. So there's a lot of folks. In some cases, Greater Spokane is a lead on something. Some cases we're assisting. Some cases we're not involved, and there's just other groups that are working on moving things forward. Next slide, please. The PTAC is actually going to get a name change. It's now being managed directly out of Department of Defense. So it will become the Apex Accelerator. So you may hear that term come up, but that helps small businesses work on government contracting at the federal level, the state level, but even the local level. Alicia Rodell in our shop is the Forest Service expert. So the Viper system and fighting forest fires. She actually went out on the Boulder Mountain fire. One of her clients, his truck hit another truck and lost a part. So they ended up finding the part, and she ended up running it up out to the fire and signed up 8 additional clients while she was up there. Next slide. Business retention expansion, we hired a new, somebody solely focused on business retention expansion, George Wagner, came to us after retiring out of the Navy. George has been out busily meeting with businesses. In his first 6 months, he met with, 2022, we met with 116 businesses. We'll actually expand that out this year and be well over 200 businesses that we'll work with, get out to. Some don't need assistance, some do. So really what we're trying to find is businesses that we can help, connect resources. One of those businesses was Carbon Crest in Spokane Valley. They were looking to do an expansion, and we were able to secure a $350,000 SRF grant for them, and we recently secured an SRF grant for Aeroflight, and still going into the contracting for that. That one, Aeroflight, was $450,000. Next slide. So Advantage Spokane. For us at GSI, when we refer to Advantage Spokane, it's really all of our outbound marketing efforts. So it's built on a base that is the website, and we have different funding sources that we put together to be able to do all this work. The website, the maintenance of the website, and in that case, it's primarily the subscriptions that make the website run. It's based off a GIS system called GIS Planning that takes in demographic data, GIS data from the county, as well as real estate data. And then that's a very powerful tool that sits at the middle of our Advantage Spokane website. We have the updated content, and some of the other efforts that go into managing the website are put in by GSI. Wait, did I get, okay. I'm saying GIS and GSI. I'm trying to make sure I got that right. Sometimes they sound wrong in my mind. So GSI puts in the efforts to keep the website and get the content updated. We've added videos, things like that. That gets funded through our ADO funding and through GSI's membership funding. We did value propositions for life science and advanced manufacturing. We call them the steps. They're basically a folder that we use when we're talking to companies and to lay out, hey, you're a life science company, here's why you should be in Spokane. And so they include 8 pages and they're text. It's a physical document, but we also have that mirrored on the website as well. Digital campaigns to promote the website, and we target these into key metro areas. We'll target 3 metros each year. Digital campaigns get targeted towards folks in advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and tech, so companies specifically, and C-suite executives. So we're really trying to target that advertising, with the click-through then being taking you to the Advantage Spokane website. We do trade shows. Those are all done in partnership with other organizations. And then as well, we have our sales missions, which are really where we're out talking to companies and trying to create a bunch of internally generated leads, which we'll talk about at the end. Next slide. So this is the Advantage Spokane website over the course of 2022. You can see we didn't have any campaigns running in the beginning of the year. Towards the in the second or third quarter and fourth quarter, we ran campaigns in Seattle as well as Portland. But when we run those campaigns, we actually see an increase in hits from across the country. They're not just targeted in those areas, but those will be the big bumps you'll see. And then we see kind of a tail coming out of that. So we generate a lot of traffic to the Advantage Spokane website, but again, it's targeted traffic. So the ads are being targeted to specific individuals. And then that's who we're trying to get the click-throughs from. Next slide. These are the newsletters. So each month we'll put out a newsletter primarily to site selectors. I just got back from the Site Selectors Forum, which is the Site Selectors Guild. So these are especially folks who work with companies on relocating and expansion opportunities across the country. Newsletters, depending on who you talk to, about half of them really like a newsletter. They'll store it, they'll keep that information for later, and then when they're working with a client, they'll go, oh, Spokane, you know, I remember these newsletter stories we had. So we get a pretty good open rate from those. usually around the above 20%. And it goes out to 2,500 folks, 2,500 site selectors, as well as businesses that we come in contact with through trade shows or sales missions get added to that list. And it will go out to some local folks. So if you'd like to sign up, you can go to the GSI website and sign up for that newsletter. Next slide. This is our outbound marketing. So we had sales missions to LA, Seattle, and Portland. The way those work is we use a firm that contacts thousands of companies in each one of those areas in those three specific: life science, tech, advanced manufacturing. We identify companies who are, one, looking to expand in the next 5 years, and two, are interested in learning more about Spokane. And then I will go and meet with those companies. And it's initial, it's like a first date, and then we'll continue those leads as we move on. So about half of the companies we meet with actually become active leads. So you can see some of the media results. Our digital campaign in Seattle had almost 1.4 million impressions. We had over 4,000 click-throughs, and you can see the results for Portland as well. And we did have one site visit last year that we supported. So next slide. These are just where we're going to be going. You'll notice we've gone for most of March, now back for most of April, and then gone again. But we'll lay this out each year. And then we look at, again, the trade shows are done in connections with other organizations. So we try to partner as much as we can, gives us a bigger bang for our buck. And I believe this may be the last slide. Then these are just the internally generated leads. None of those are over a year old right now. So, we're getting our program back up and running. We have, it's about 35 leads in there. Did a little color coding with the pink being ones that are probably going to fall off, the blues somewhere in the middle, and the green are still active and things that we are working on, and companies that are interested. What comes out of this is we tend to get site visits, and it's a funnel. We contact this many companies, we meet with this many, we get this many site visits, and we get this many who actually land here. So we're feeding in the top of the funnel now, and everything kind of stopped during COVID. And now we're back out there and generating those leads to put into the funnel. I think that might be the last slide. Want to try the next one? Oh, just the calendar. Many of you are joining us in DC. And then next slide. All right.
Any questions?
Yeah, can you go back 2 slides?
Yeah.
So Project Redwood,
Mm-hmm.
that's Louisiana Pacific.
Yep.
Okay, so your chart is way out of date. I mean, they're already in for permitting.
Yeah, no, they were just listed. Yeah, they're moving forward. So they had contacted us prior to the whole water issue that we were able to get resolved, and looking at incentives. So yeah, but that's been within the past year, and so we'll clear them off as
So you listed as internally generated, but it really wasn't internally generated because I started working with them several months before they ever contacted you.
Yeah, so it's in that case, yes. But we try to we have a system, so there are leads coming to us outside of the state system where we get those state leads. So there's 2 or 3 like those in there. Most of them are through the sales missions where we get these leads.
Any other questions?
I got one. Can you just tell me more about the innovation cluster?
Sure. How much? So
You said there were 9 of them, so
9 of them,
what are
yes.
the innovation other ones? And
So some of the other ones, there's one in the Tri-Cities, Vertical is its name. It's focused on energy manufacturing, though specific around the nuclear industry. There's another one for aviation, like sustainable aviation fuels out of the west side. There's one on 5G. And a handful of others across the state. Ours is the only life science focused one.
And what does that mean, an innovation cluster? What does
Sure.
that do for us to designate it
So,
that way?
An innovation cluster brings together 5 areas. Brings together business that's working in that sector. It brings together the entrepreneurial community in that sector, so the startups. It brings together education, this is usually universities, higher education, government, and there's one other that I'm missing in that 5. And brings them together to work on developing and building the cluster. So an example in Washington State is a cluster called Maritime Blue. They're totally focused on the seaports and sustainability at the seaports and bringing things in. And so that cluster is a very mature cluster. It has a number of folks who work for it, but that's the intent, is you get these groups together to work on building and developing that cluster more and increasing it. So Evergreen Bio is what we would refer to as an emerging cluster. So it's something we're starting on, but we do have, so the medical schools are involved in it. We have different businesses who are engaged in that. And that group just recently completed, they fostered within GSI. So GSI got the grant, fostered within GSI, and we're working to build that up into what will be a freestanding organization. But they just recently got their 501c3 status.
We tend to see cluster tends to be a way to like accelerate whatever industry you're focusing on. So they the whole now 2 decades into building towards here is that we needed to build enough of the different assets, the different of the types of companies both starting up, coming here, that you build a cluster that's attractive, that you can market and position as part of your economic development angles. So we've done similar types of work, with NWAC and some of those others that run the aerospace sector for the region. And so can we have, 2 to 3 competitive clusters where we're able to, and in the case of even Evergreen Bio and some of the work they're working with NWAC, right? Because we have a lot of shared assets across our contract manufacturing community that can be making things for both industries. And so how do you build those, strengthen those assets and needs across the region? And happy, we actually have we just did a briefing to our executive committee with Evergreen Bio, and so happy to both share that with you, or could have them sit down with you separately and kind of walk through in more detail what that looks like at any point.
We're starting to see some of the connections. So I had a sales mission to Denver, and so we were doing marketing down there for the company down there that ended up getting in touch with Evergreen Bio, and then I connected with them while I was there, and then they're connecting us with what are called CROs, which is contract research organizations. And so if we look at life sciences within Washington State, we don't have a lot of contract research organizations. So that's one where we're thinking, oh, there's a gap. There's an opportunity to build on fill that gap, and we think that can be done in Spokane.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you guys.
Great to see you.
Have a good week.
Thank you, you as well. Okay, next up, George Dahl from our Housing Community Development.
Yeah, thanks, commissioners. I'm gonna go ahead and have Adam.
I was looking down
Snuck in
here.
here.
Hey, George, where is he? There he is.
Who's this voice?
Gonna have Adam go ahead and give the briefing here today.
Thanks, everybody. Good morning. I do apologize for the lengthy PowerPoint. This is in regard to an amendment to add additional funding to one of our subrecipients. I did add some history just to help kind of explain why the subrecipient was in need of additional funding, but we can breeze through this to respect everybody's time in the morning. So again, this is CHG funding. This is provided to us through Commerce. This is a 3-year grant funding to help with our homeless response crisis system. During this process, in 2001, the county had contracted with the city of Spokane in order to apply for these funding. And then late in 2001, it was decided that the county would be taking these contracts back over due to just the the back and forth with the contracts and giving over the time frame, they weren't able to give us these contracts back in time to hold a competitive RFP this year. So instead, to avoid a service gap, we decided to roll over the existing contracts that the city had already worked in. Those 3 contracts are with SNAP. Those provide street outreach, homeless prevention services. The other contract is with Catholic Charities for rapid rehousing for Families Project. And then, of course, our YWCA, which is the subrecipient who needed the additional funding. It was discovered during desk monitoring earlier this year that the YWCA, you can skip to about slide 8. It was discovered that the YWCA was going to run out of operating funding. In order to maintain that they would be able to provide services for the remainder of the program year, we elected to add some additional funding based upon just their current projections and how much time is left in the program as well. So we ended up adding an additional $89,000 to the operations category for them. And this should be enough money to their budget to help them provide enough services for the end of the year. They were wanting to initially remove additional funding from rent and rent allocations. However, we felt it best not to take any money away from direct client services at this time and focus on the subrecipient to just spend down as much as possible. We do understand that when there's money left on the table with these, they don't necessarily look the best or score the best for the subrecipients. But due to just the complications of this funding, we just felt it best to make sure that we write out the rest of the program year and just address these issues in the future. Any questions or concerns?
No, straightforward.
I got one.
Yeah, go for it.
When you say you added 89,000 to operations, what does that mean?
So with this funding, with the 3-year funding, the original plan was to open up the additional funding to other applicants. But again, due to the time frame, we didn't have time to hold a request for proposal. So we ended up with a bank of just money that was not funded through the contracts, that was basically there for any kind of, that Commerce had allowed us to use within the guidelines of the program funding to use just for emergency expenses. So it was basically, okay, we wanted to open this up. Unfortunately, we weren't able to. So then at that point, that funding pot had kind of just been sitting there. When this opportunity arose, we felt it best to use that additional funding to just cover the operations costs to make sure, again, that they could continue to perform services throughout the program.
So basically some additional administrative costs to help them get across the finish line for the end of the contract period.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. Kevin, it's all yours.
Tony?
Tony joined in as well?
Tony will be doing the majority of speaking.
Oh, okay. All right. Tony and Ken are Kevin and Ken are pushing it off to Tony.
All right.
Take it away.
All right. Back in 2017. Oh, my bad. I apologize.
That's all right. You have your resume published up? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Scott holds a grudge.
Just kidding.
Yeah, so back in 2017, the county did a project to study records retention. And out of that came a recommendation that we look at our email retention scheme and how we could improve that. As you all know, public records are under a mandate that you're not allowed to dispose of public records without properly checking them against the retention schedule. And that sort of, when it comes to electronic records like emails, sets agencies up with a difficult choice between basically digital hoarding, where you keep everything so that you don't accidentally get rid of something, and then a real intensive records management program. And the county has in the past pursued this strategy of sort of digital hoarding when it comes to our email archive. We retain everything, which is not an uncommon situation to be in. A lot of agencies have found themselves in that situation. So for the past year or so, our group has been meeting to discuss ways that we can start moving away from digital hoarding and towards records management. Next slide. So from our 2017 recommendations, we projected that we would get to 125 million email messages in our archive by 2026. As you know, it's 2023, and we are already at 161 million email messages in our archive, so growing even more rapidly than we projected back in 2017.
Nicely done, guys.
Well done.
And that just happened the last 3 months, right?
Yeah, right. That just means we're going paperless, right? Isn't that what that means?
Yeah.
Not a good accomplishment.
So we have found ourselves in somewhat of a hole in terms of how many emails we are retaining and sort of the costs associated with that. Next slide, Gina. So for the time period of 2021 to 2023, we were paying about $52,000 per year on our Barracuda archiving contract. But in our most recent contract with Barracuda, that has tripled. In addition to the actual physical costs of the digital archiving, there's also the staff time that is associated when you have that many emails or electronic records in one archive. The amount of staff time necessary to fulfill public records requests just sort of balloons the more you have to look through. And then the very bottom part there is just a little bit of some of the potential PRA penalties. The legislature estimated in a recent bill that in 2021 alone, agencies spent about $7.2 million on litigation and penalties. Obviously, that's not something that'll go away with better email retention, but it is something that we could vastly improve upon if we had a more comprehensive email retention scheme. Next slide, please. So our long-term goal is to develop an email retention procedure that allows us to appropriately categorize all of our emails so that we are managing our electronic records in a way that allows us to dispose of them when they've met their retention value. But this is a sort of a large project, and you can't really turn the ship around all at once. So over the past year, as we've been discussing this problem, we have come up with the idea that sort of the best solution when you find yourself in a hole is to stop digging. So the lowest hanging fruit, the way that we can make the biggest impact, we believe, is to start by identifying what are our transitory emails, which do not have a retention value. And based on conversations with departments and some audits of emails that we've done, we believe that the vast majority of our emails are transitory and could be disposed of if we had a system in place to do that. So what we want to do is roll out a phase 1 of this project where we develop an e-learning course for records retention focused on how to identify transitory records, and then make that a required course for all county employees. That actually, that phase is already done. That course has been created and is available on Percipio for all county employees, but we haven't pushed it out as mandatory yet. And then from there, we would communicate to employees that there is a button available in Outlook that Scott Ackerland has set up where they can actually mark emails as transitory. Right now, that button is active for a few users, but it's not active across the entire end user database. But once the transitory training was completed by all county employees, we could turn that on and then have employees start to mark their emails that they believe are transitory. And then a few months after we start that, it would be our hope to go in and audit those emails to see if we're doing a good job of identifying the correct records as transitory. And then based on that, we may need to go back to additional training if we're finding a lot of emails in there that we do not believe are transitory. Or if we believe that people are doing a good job of marking emails as transitory, then we could turn on an automated retention that would delete those emails after 90 days. And that wouldn't take care of our 161 million emails in our archive, but that would sort of help us to stop digging so that we can hopefully not retain all those transitory emails in the future.
Tony, would you give a quick overview of what's a transitory email, or examples of transitory emails?
Yeah. So under Chapter 6 of the retention schedule, it details records with no retention value. And these are like scheduling emails, just FYI emails sent out, secondary copies of things. So a lot of our email traffic is actually automated email traffic, that we have these listservs that go out to all public defenders every morning telling them where all the cases are for that day, right? All of those emails could be marked as transitory because they are not the primary copy of the court docket for that day, right? They're just FYI emails to our employees. So I think there is a lot of opportunity to identify low-hanging fruit like that where especially these big listservs, unsolicited email from companies making sales pitches, a lot of different types of emails fall under transitory.
Thank you. FYIs.
Yeah, retirement announcements, social emails, but even a lot of emails that are
I don't know if you two get them, but every day I get one from governing.com. I get an email every day from governing.com, and I get one from NACO every single day.
Yeah.
So, and it's just a newsletter. So I assume those are
Yep, those would be transitory.
So the NACO's ones I just delete, and then the ones from Scott Simmons, I get rid of those.
Oh, yeah.
Transitory too.
Transitory.
You have a rule in Outlook that just sends them to trash.
Commissioner French's daily invitation to breakfast is one I just delete.
Just delete from now on.
Okay.
So this is really, you're trying to get your arms around the forward-looking piece of it, not the backward necessarily.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
Okay. So assuming your phase one goes well, you get the transitory piece figured out, what would phase two potentially look like? Different types of retention for different types of emails, right? HR record has this length of time.
Different buckets. with
Legislative has
retention
that.
Schedules on them. It's a little more complex when we start looking beyond transitory because people have to start making judgment calls about what type of email this is.
Yeah.
And what category it falls under state law wise. So it's a bigger step. We'll learn a lot from this, we're hoping, and we'll evaluate at that point.
Would there be a way to flag sent as transitory too? Like when you click send on an email, it pops up with something that says, is this transitory, yes or no? Because that's a whole nother bucket of emails.
It's a possibility on things that you do send.
Yeah, I believe from talking to Scott that is possible with our current transitory rule. Like, just like if you mark an email as high importance or something before you send it, I believe you could mark it as transitory with this rule before you send it, which would definitely help for the person receiving it. Then they don't have to do that work, and that probably would be the best way to go about it in terms of internal emails, is having the responsibility be on the sender, on the person who is creating the email.
So you need us to take any action? You say the Percipio training already exists. You're gonna do some training for the employee. Do you need us to take any action on this, or is this more of just you're letting us know as a transitory FYI, hey, we're doing this? So.
I don't believe we need to change any county policies, any existing policies.
Just looking for approval to move forward. Yeah, just allow us to release it as mandatory training and start reviewing and monitoring and making decisions from there.
Any objection? Okay.
So I do have one question for you. At one of the LSC meetings, a number of county commissioners were talking about platforms for their websites, And evidently, a number of counties are moving away from .org and moving to either .gov or US or net or others and stuff. And so are you familiar with this conversation
we're moving
going
toward
on?
.gov. We hope to be there later this summer.
Okay, good.
If you go to the .gov, if you put in Spokane County .gov now, you will be directed to our website. We want that exactly reversed to where our website is .gov. And if you are just familiar with typing in SpokaneCounty.org, you will be directed to our .gov site. It gives us a lot more capability to seek out funding and for various things.
Yeah, but just as long as you're familiar with that conversation, that's all I need to say in a public meeting.
It doesn't quite take you there, but.
Oh, it does when I do that, it takes you right there.
It's not his either.
Need to know.
I'll work on it. I'll work on it.
Live test case. The Monday morning bug.
I'll let you know when that's working.
Our website's got a case of the Mondays.
You've been warned.
There's always one.
All right, well, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Chandra, is long time no see. Wow, we haven't seen you in here for quite a while. All right, Chandra Fox, Emergency Management.
So,
Take it away.
well, I believe I was asked to come and give you a briefing on the status of our re-signing, re-upping of our service contracts with our incorporated cities and towns in the county. The Valley has asked for a 45-day extension in their decision period. Not completely surprised by that. My experience with the Valley is they're very deliberate in their process and they want to be sure that they have all of their information that they want in order to make their decision. They're also very concerned. They wanted to be sure that the city was also re-signing. And we do have confirmation both verbally and in writing from the city of Spokane that they'll be renewing their contract with us as well. So I don't know for our new commissioners, if you want some more information on what our structure is and why this is important. Okay. So I believe the original omnibus agreement for emergency management services in the county was signed back in 1979. So it's this overall structure has been in place for quite some time. I was hired in 2017, and one of the first things that I did was sit down with Sheriff Knezovich and go through what our documents were and what our authorities, how they were lined out in the county ordinance and then in our documents. And the omnibus agreement had some challenges to it that really effectively opened the county to some exposure for liability. And I wanted to close those. So in 2020, we made the change from the omnibus agreement, which was just the umbrella agreement, including everyone. And we switched from that to individual service contracts. So all of our incorporated cities and towns in the county have individual service contracts with our office. And that does a couple of things. It protects the county in terms of us being an independent contractor. But more importantly, it also outlines for each of the jurisdictions that they have responsibilities as well. And that was lacking in the original omnibus. And so we closed that loophole, and we're just encouraging all of our municipalities to really, pay attention to this because it's important work, and making sure that they're kind of holding up their end of the bargain.
How long are those contracts and when do they typically come up for renewal?
So it's currently written as a 3-year contract. And then hopefully after this next round, we'll go to just in perpetuity unless notice is given that they want to withdraw.
And what are the duties that the locals have in a nutshell?
So in a nutshell, every jurisdiction is responsible for their own stuff. They maintain control of their resources. They have a duty to ensure that they have continuity of operations and continuity of government plans. And nothing in the agreement takes any of their autonomy away. The county, obviously is never going to step in and tell them they have to do something. or they need to do it this way, we function as technical assistance and support for them. But all of their authorities remain. Anything else? And then just since I have you as a captive audience, I wanted to share something with you. So every year, the International Association of Emergency Managers and the National Emergency Management Association produce what is called the Return on Investment Report for Congress. This is specifically addressing the Emergency Management Program grant. And it looks at how this important funding is being utilized across the country. Here, the EMPG money is about 32% of our budget. We do use it for salaries and benefits for 2 of our staff, as well as special projects. And I just wanted you to know that we were highlighted in the national report this year as a success story for EMPG success stories. And it talks about, little blurb here on what we are doing with our EMPG dollars and what we're doing in our communities. So just a little brag for the department on that. So happy to share that with you.
Very good.
Are there any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Very much. I will leave this with you. So, okay, thank you.
All right, so Matt Zarecor and Andy Shank. We've got a road vacation and then a road maintenance briefing. So I don't know if Kyle wants to lead off. Who's gonna take it away first?
Sure, we'll go knock the vacation out real quick, and then we'll have a little bit more of an extended briefing with regards to our road maintenance efforts here. So we'll just pop right in and take care of the Wagner Road vacation first.
Good morning. Hope everybody had a good weekend and good Easter. So the first thing we got is this vacation. This is, as you can see on the vicinity map, it's in the very southwest corner of the county. And the little piece of road you can see there highlighted in blue is Wagner Road. It's an unopened right of way and very, very rural. Most of that roadway is not open. They're kind of building it through a private road network. We do have county roads, 1 mile to the east and form a Brock Lake Road. And 3 miles to the west, we have Mullinex, which are both fairly major roads. They're kind of rural arterials for us. So we already have a pretty good north-south road system. The main east-west connection you can see is Williams Lake Road, right at the north end of the aerial photo there. And McMartin to the south, I think it's about 4 miles, is the other connection. It is a summer road, the definition of summer road, very, very lightly maintained. So that's kind of it. We don't feel we need to hang on to this. We don't see the immediate or even the distant public need for it. We suspect, like all of rural Spokane County, a road system will develop over time as needed, and that'll be done through development. So we would support vacating that right of way. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So we've got Andy here to lead us through our spring and summer road maintenance and preservation activities. For a couple of you commissioners, this will be very familiar, but Commissioner Jordan, I know some of this is new, so please feel free to pop in, interrupt, ask questions. I'll try to have Andy break a few of the terms and things down. He gets rolling sometimes. He's been talking roads for so long, he just kind of rolls through concepts sometimes a little quickly. So we'll try to stop and make sure everything's crystal clear and start talking about how we're now moving out of our snow maintenance season and how our crews are being utilized in spring and summer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andy Shank. I am the Road Maintenance and Operations Administrator for the county. I've been here 4 years, but before that I had about 10 years experience with the city of Spokane in street maintenance and a total of 16 years with them. We'll just start with some general information. I talk lane miles versus center line miles because lane miles is actually the amount of work that we have to do. For every mile of road, we have at least 2 miles that we have to maintain. And so just some quick numbers, as you see there, we've got approximately 2,800 lane miles of hard surface, 1,900 miles of gravel roads, and then about 300 miles of summer roads or like the Wagner Road that is just right away out there. for a total of 5,000, almost 5,100 lane miles. Last year, we kind of did this breakdown so people kind of understand on our gravel roads. If we do a ADT count, that's average daily traffic, under about 250, that equates to approximately 25 homes. Every home produces approximately 10 trips a day. So we just tried to give some examples of some roads around the county, how many miles we have in those, and what the traffic counts are on those roads. And then quickly, our budget is basically broken into two parts: preservation, which is our chip seal overlay, is preserving our existing roads. That's about 8.5 million, 8.6 million. And then our maintenance budget's about almost $14 million for a total of $22 million budget. This next slide this is kind of what we do as soon as the weather breaks after winter. This year, we started doing some of our projects, and 2 weeks ago down South County, we had almost 9 inches of snow. So we had to back up and kind of start over again, which is disappointing. And I think spring has come, I hope. So we prepare for, we prepare for the dust, oiling, we grade our gravel roads, we do pothole patching all the time, but we really get into it now with the thaw. We repair gravel roads, we do some street cleaning and drainage repair, and we'll kind of go through these on the next slide. The the asphalt plants just opened up today for hot mix, so we'll change from using cold mix to hot mix this week. Hot mix is a better material, and if the holes are dry and we can get them clean, then those patches will last us a long time. We do use cold mix because we don't want to pop tires. We want to be safe to the drivers, but if you're throwing cold mix in the middle of winter and it's cold and there's de-icer in it, it might last a day, it might last a week. You just never know, but we've got to do something to make the roads safe. We do patch potholes year round, but now that the weather's warming up and we have hot mix, we'll concentrate first on the deeper potholes, and then we'll go back and start running corridors. Then you also see on the gravel roads, we'll have some drainage issues that we have to fix. These could be because the ditch was plugged from multiple things, but sometimes it's just plugged with snow and ice. And then the water will find the easiest way across the road and erode it out. So a lot of times we'll do a temporary fix to get traffic through. And then as the weather clears up, we'll get back and do a more permanent fix. The next slide is our springtime grading. And we're talking about this because a lot of times you guys will get complaints that we're not doing it right, we're not doing it quick enough. So that's why we're really trying to give you the information, so if you get the calls, you know what's going on. In the springtime, if weather allows, because we need the moisture in there, we like to grade each gravel road 3 times on the major gravel roads. And we do a cut and fill method. So we cut the top off because you can really only take 1 inch of the gravel road off. If you take too much, it gets too soft and our machines really can't handle it. And we fill the potholes. And then we let the traffic pack it. And then we do it again. And really by the 3rd time, you've got a good roadway surface. Last year, we had all that rain in June, and most of our gravel roads were pretty good throughout the summer because we were able to get them graded 3 times. It takes each grader is assigned an area, and it takes them about 2 weeks to get through that area. So we need about 6 weeks of this moisture that we're getting right now to get a good road that'll hold us hopefully through the summer. And then in the fall, we'll grade them, try to get them graded twice more before we go into winter. The summer roads, depending on how much they're traveled, will get graded once a year or sometimes once every 3 years. And we start that as soon as the weather breaks, and we try to have it completed really mid-May if the weather allows. The next slide. So the next slide is street sweeping. We've got 2 types of sweepers out there. We have what we call our internal pickup brooms, which is the one on the left. We use that in our curbed areas where we can't just sweep the material off the road. And then the picture on the right is our kick brooms, where we're just kicking it off in the rural areas. We like to get through the roads our whole network once each year. And like we'd started sweeping here a few weeks ago, and then we had to throw some sand because of that snow last week, so then we had to back up. And in some areas, we've actually leased some kick brooms and stuff and run them in pairs because we put so much sand down this year that it's taking multiple passes to get the roads clean. And it's usually a team, like right now out west, we've got 2 kick brooms, a water truck, and then usually a follow vehicle that work together throughout the days trying to clean roads out there. Okay? Any questions?
Well, I've got one on the street, on the street cleaning, that's something I get a lot of emails on that. Is there any way, do we track those like we do with our plows? Like on our plows where we have a map that kind of shows what's been done, what's up next, kind of thing? Is there any way we can do that?
We haven't
with
done
street
that. We
sweeping?
could do it with street sweeping on our machines, because how that map is populated is through our GPS system.
Yeah.
This, in the past, we've usually leased a couple of both types of sweepers.
Okay.
This year, we haven't been able to. They just don't have them out there. I actually even contacted the city of Spokane to see if we could lease a couple of pickup rooms from them, and everybody's using them right now this time of the year. But we could add a map like that. The problem is 2/3 of the data would be accurate, and about 1/3 wouldn't be.
Okay.
Just because we don't have the equipment in.
Okay.
And we try to coordinate around garbage day the best we can.
That's another common email I get.
And we do get it. But sometimes if it's right to sweep, we gotta kind of take the chance and sweep around the garbage cans. But we do try to coordinate that the best we can. Garbage will not move for us.
And a couple of things you could do inside of that, you could do it manually, similar to the way we do with residential neighborhoods in the wintertime, where we just say, you know, we're working in this area, here's where we're gonna be next. And it wouldn't be real time, like this data, but you give them something, and you could give even a plan of here's what we anticipate doing, weather dependent. Give them the neighborhoods laid out, kind of a color-coded neighborhood map, because they do work in areas one at a time.
Yeah, I mean, if that's something, I guess one of my big fears is these pieces of equipment tend to break down a lot because there's a lot of moving parts on it. So it would be very preliminary map, you know, hey, we're gonna be in this, you know, let's say like the Northwood area for the next couple weeks. And we might be there, we might not, depending on what equipment's up and running and what other activities have maybe risen higher to our effort. But yeah, if that's something we think is needed, we can definitely work on that. Okay?
All right.
So the next slide, we as Spokane County, we don't put down any dust palliative. We do have some gravel road stabilization. So all of the dust oiling is done by the citizens. They call one of the contractors, and there's about 5 in the area. They pull the permit with us. Because what happens is our permit center takes the permit, sends it to the district managers. They'll go out and look at the road. If it had just been graded, they'll give it the okay, or if it needs graded, we'll go out and grade that road. And then once we hit the okay button, it automatically sends something emailed back to the dust oiler, and he can go do it. He's supposed to do it within 3 to 5 business days. They can request a regrade if they have to. If they didn't get there and it got washboardy for some reason. There are a few areas that are high traffic volumes with hills, and we'll work with the company. They've done it for years, and so we'll say, hey, we're gonna grade it Thursday afternoon, and then they try to be there Friday morning. It's a big effort for us. As you see, we average about 675 requests, and those can be anywhere from a couple hundred feet to 1,000.
And just for your awareness, this is kind of a unique program, I'd say. I don't think this is incredibly common. It's kind of labor intensive on the administrative side, because we're getting almost 700 spot requests all around the county, and trying to frankly interrupt our what would be a streamlined grading operation to be responsive to this. But honestly, it's a lot of work. And I think it's really worth it. I mean, this is a really big customer service thing that we do, that we offer. It actually does a reasonable job of keeping dust down once we hit those dry months. And B, over time, if the same constituents continue to oil their roads, they eventually start building some structure in that road, kind of like our gravel stabilization. So we do want to encourage this. It's something we support. It's not the most efficient thing we do, but I think for the long-term health of our roadways, this is really a program that we want to be that customer service, and go the extra mile for, because it really does help out our roadways, and they have a better experience.
So the oiling and the sweeping are all part of the region's compliance with EPA in terms of our non-attainment designation that came out of the mid-'80s. And so we are now in the last 2 years of our second cycle for attainment. And if we maintain up this next two years, then we will be, the EPA will say, thank you very much, have a nice day, and we will be off the radar. So, kudos to the work that they do. It contributes to keeping PM 2.5 and 10 out of the air, which is part of that attainment metric that EPA monitors us on a daily basis.
Yeah, I believe right now that we don't, really when we get a bad spike, it's usually on a windy day, and it's bringing a lot of the stuff from the farms contributing to the dust from the sand and then these gravel roads, but it's mainly coming from the farmlands now. Any questions on that? I would like to figure out a better way to do that, just because, Kyle could call and have his stretch graded and we can grade it. And maybe he works with the neighbor down the road and this person in the middle then calls in 2 weeks later and we have to go out and grade that. But I don't want to necessarily be the manager of 5 different private companies and trying to figure out who gets to go where and stuff like that. So we do encourage people when they call and ask about it, we'll talk to your neighbor that's done it, try to go together, so. The next slide, we're going to transition into our summer activities. And is what we did here is we kind of highlighted the big preservation projects. And that when I say big, that's where most of our money and time goes in the summertime, is towards those preservation projects, which are our permanent gravel, our chip seal, our paving, and our crack seal. But in the same time, we're doing maintenance activities like brushing, which is clearing the roadside shoulders of everything from trees to small shrubs that grow up. That improves sight distance for animals and stuff. It opens up the road to sunshine and stuff in the winter months. And then again, for our like chip seal or paving activities, we clear out overhead because we got to raise up our boxes as we're going through. Shouldering is kind of the same thing. A lot of times coming out of winter, you'll start to get that drop off at the edge of the pavement. So we try to bring the gravel back up even with the pavement. So if cars happen to leave the roadway, they can hopefully enter safely. Ditching, same thing. We'll do some ditching with a grader where we just stick the blade down there and try to peel out that ditch to keep water flowing. Or in some cases, we have to get an excavator or a backhoe and dig it out and clean the culverts. Edge patching on a lot of our rural roads that have been built with a chip seal BST. They start to break away. So that's a very labor intensive hand patching where we're trying to build that edge of that pavement back up. I need to talk to the striping crew and make sure that they only stripe the road at 12 feet and not 13 or 14 as we widen out, because it seems like people tend to drive over our white line all the time. And then culvert and repair and replacement. We have a lot of old culverts that have rotted out on the bottom and we repair those. So we'll get into the meat and potatoes, our permanent gravel roads. Next slide, please. Okay, there we go. So as you see, we spend approximately $1 million on our gravel road stabilization, which is $225,000, maintaining those. Back in 2019, we did an experiment on a handful of gravel roads. Newkirk is one of them, Stevens Creek is one of them. Usually some high volume and maybe where they weren't necessarily just the residentials, but other factors like Stevens Creek has the park entrance at the end of it. Newkirk was because of the Euclid Bridge. So we picked these higher volumes. I believe it was a great product. But if you look at a 20-year life cycle on that compared to like a BST, they're about equal at the end. What the gravel road stabilization does for us is it's a cheaper upfront cost. And I don't know how to track it. I believe our level of service is a lot higher, and I don't know what value to put on it. Usually these roads that we've done gravel road stabilization, they will last through the summer. Newkirk has, I think it's about 750 vehicles a day on it because of the military base and stuff out there. And for the most part, that road is in a lot better shape than any other gravel road that has that traffic on it. But to put a price tag on that, it's hard to do that. And then also we do re-gravel roads, but if you look at the number, we're doing 15 lane miles out of 2,100 lane miles of re-gravel. And we concentrate usually on 2 districts a year. So this year we're doing District 1, which is our north, and District 4, which is our east district. And then we'll switch to the other 2, just kind of concentrate our resources in one area.
Those are public works districts.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, not
Sorry, not
council
commissioner districts. We have 4 public works districts, north, south, east, and west.
So 1 and 4 would be general areas of what?
Would be the north and the east side of the county.
Commissioner District 3.
Yeah, mainly condition, yeah.
I'm okay with it.
That's where we have our highest concentrations of gravel roads.
So yeah, so then next year we will do west and south, and we just kind of bounce back and forth on those re-gravel roads. The next slide is our overlay crew. This is probably one of our most productive crews throughout the summer, and we do 2 types of overlays. We do one on roads that just need to be overlaid. As an example, like Elk Chatteroy, we started in Elk about 3 years ago, and we knock out about a mile or so each year. Or we're also overlaying roads, preparing them for the next year to be chip sealed. And we can do about 32 lane miles for $3.4 million. And that's with our crews. We lease the paver and the rollers, and then we use our equipment personnel to do that.
Well, and really, just to highlight these next few slides, if you look at what it costs us to do it with our crews compared to contracting private sector, like the paving, you can see it's 2.5 times as much to put the dollars on the street and contract it, and it's a big deal. We have really good crews. The equipment's become phenomenal. These pavers and rollers now, we turn out a really high quality product, and that's largely due to the crews, but also the equipment. So that's been a really big benefit. We have struggled in recent years, like everybody has, with staffing and labor shortages, but the big impact is when we can't get the seasonals and summers to man, like the flagging and some of the traffic control type positions, we end up having to staff those with full-time employees out of our road maintenance district, which means we can get less of this work done. That's been a huge issue for us. So really focused on that. Andy and his team have been doing a great job getting those seasonal employees, but that's pivotal to making all these numbers work and getting the work done.
Yeah, as an example, for seasonal employees, we want to hire around 55. And last year, I think we had a high of like 23 at one time, and we had like 18 for most of the summer. This year's looking about the same. I think we've got 8 working right now, and we have some college and high school kids that will come on. But we're not going to hit our 55. And even just to do our main work, we'd like to have 30, and I don't think we'll get there. So then we have to use permanent employees, and that costs us more, and it impacts what else we can get done. And then I can't say enough about our crews. Our crews have been doing this long enough. Nothing against the inlands and Shamrocks and stuff like that. They do a great job, but our guys, when we transition, we have to transition back to our old road. And so they can actually rake the ruts in, and so that you get a more smooth transition going on and off of these, which the contractors don't usually have to do it. They're starting at a new point and they end at a new point. So our guys do a great job of matching the existing road to hopefully give the traveling public the best possible ride.
How are you doing with staffing for the permanent group?
So permanent going into winter, we were down about 21 out of 86 or 88. And now we're down, last count last week was 13. So we've made some improvements over the winter. We're interviewing again on Thursday, and that's almost a continuous right now since I've been here for the last 4 years. It's open continuous, and about every couple weeks we try to interview the next group that is applied. Since probably about December, we've actually gotten some really good employees that come with some experience, and yeah, I thought we were almost down to under 10, which is exciting for me.
It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and really, it's a big kudos to, you know, Andy, Jim, Kathy, as well as the district supervisors. I mean, on top of trying to manage their teams and such, they spend probably a day a week on recruiting, interviews, and training programs for these staff. And they take a while to train on all the equipment, because as you've seen here, our crews, you don't drive a grader year round. You don't do a single thing year round. We go all hands on deck for winter, and then it's all that spring maintenance and grading and cleanup and pallet preparedness, and then everybody disperses into these separate summer crews. And we're overlaying chip sealing and crack sealing, and then back into grading, and then back to the following winter. So they're changing what they're doing throughout the year, and so it takes several years for them to really get the lay of each type of operation, and then really getting the nuances of their own road network of the district that they're in. And so it's frustrating when we also lose people, but we're constantly doing everything in our power to get to full staff.
And that's a good point. We have one day, you know, during COVID, we put that early retirement out. One day we had 120 years of experience left in one day, retired in one day. And so these new people we bring in, I mean, some of them don't even know the area. You know, you tell them to go up to Bigelow and Forker, and they look at you like, what are you, and you have to get out a map and show them where it's at. And then, like Kyle says, in a grader, they're not in a grader all year. So they're in a grader for a couple months in the wintertime, depending on how bad it is, 6 weeks in the spring, and, you know, 4 to 6 weeks in the summer, and we expect them to be the best they can. And it takes some of them. That's an art. Don't put me in a piece of equipment. You get a big old gouge out of your road, it wouldn't be good. It's an art to operating this equipment nowadays. So they're doing a great job.
So do you have any?
Multi-talented.
I'm sorry,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering if you've had any talent or any luck in recruiting out of the Geiger program, construction trade program, or the other program that AGC is running in partnership with the home builders.
We haven't on that yet, because they get people, I think, with the higher salaries coming out, where we try to go after people's work-life balance. You know, our crews 2 weeks ago went to 410s Monday through Thursday.
Right.
You know, a little bit of overtime on Fridays maybe, but dollar-wise, we can't compete with them. But I think we're starting to compete with the work-life balance. So kind of in a way, let them go out and work in the private for a few years to hone their skills a little bit, and then we'll try to steal them away after that.
Okay.
But yeah, we're looking at how can we recruit better. The DOT did this high school to highways program that they just started, so I've been kind of watching that to see how that goes. I was actually told yesterday I got to check into it. One of the schools in the middle of the state, they've actually, as part of their agricultural, their FA program, they've started a CDL, and they're getting their CDLs in high school. So we got to figure out how to tap into some of those to do our recruiting.
Ashley?
Yeah, thanks for calling on me. I did want to say we are seeing recruiting get better across the county in general, though. We're starting to see more applicants come in. I don't know if that's because programs are starting to expire, if that's because people are not having the same opportunities, but we are seeing more applicants starting to come through. And then to Andy's point, there are some programs that we can be looking at, whether it's internships or a DoD SkillBridge program. It's been difficult because a lot of our groups have been understaffed. So to do that training is often difficult to manage, but we are putting in some really good programs that I think Public Works is starting to look at and have opportunity to capitalize on. And then ESD is also working on a program. They haven't for a few years, but it's getting pretty stable. It's really around those trades. And Andy, to your point, the CDL. So I think there's more opportunity coming to Spokane that's starting to take hold that I think will be good opportunities for us in the coming years.
Yeah. And just to add on that, in our contract negotiations, right now, we just were able to get apprenticeship program. Basically hire people, get them into CDL training. And then once they've passed their CDL training and a few evaluations on pieces of equipment, then we can roll them into a full-time RMS. So I think we're on the cusp of being able to do a little bit better job on recruiting, and then hopefully with other stuff I'm seeing going on, we're starting to get some pretty good applicants. Any questions on paving? The next is chip seal, and I think hands down, this is probably the best program that the county has to preserve our roads. Again, these last couple things I've been talking about has just been how do we preserve our existing roads? And our guys do a great job at it. It starts with crushing in our pits. We crush in our pits mainly to get the chip rock, but that's only about half of our program, and we buy the other other half of the rock that's commercially produced. But here you can see we're doing 116 lane miles for right around $2.4 million. And this year we're expanding into some of those residential areas that in the past, which is a great philosophy, ours was we maintained our arterial paved network number one first, best first. Now we're getting into some of these residentials and we're doing the same thing there, best first. We've got one area down south off of Curtis and one area up north off of Charles Road that we're going to get into this year. A lot of those are still in pretty good shape. They just got the wide cracks. Those wide cracks are difficult for us no matter what, so we're trying different methods to try to fill those. But really, even if that wide crack comes back and you save the rest of the road, we've really done good for our roads. So again, chip seal, for those that aren't familiar with it, you lay down a thin layer of liquid asphalt, and then you follow it with a chip spreader that spreads the rock on it. And it's a chip rock, and why we call it chip rock, it's a very clean rock, all the same size. And then we hit it with 3 pneumatic rollers and a steel drum roller. And then the whole goal of this is it's packed by cars continuously for like the next couple of years. So that rock is the angular part of the rock, as the cars drive over, it gets locked into place. We got to be really careful with these that first year or two plowing them, because we can peel it off the road. But again, even if we peel some of the rock, we still have that oil on there that seals all those cracks so you can't see it. And the key to saving our roads is keeping the moisture out of the roadway.
This is basically our best bang for our buck of almost anything we do as far as added life to the roadway and cost per dollar. And even with these estimates of us being 3.5 times cheaper than outside, that might be light. Every single year when I was at the city that we built the chip seal, we contracted out a large chip seal project, about $1.5 million. That number has tripled since we started the program in 2014. So they're up even higher than probably current estimates.
So one of the reasons why we have such a robust road department is because the county over the last decade and a half has been real diligent about trying to drive economic development in the unincorporated areas so that it builds a tax base that helps feed what they're doing. And a great example of what happens, King County encouraged all of its jurisdictions annexed to heart's content, God bless you, go for it. What they did is they annexed away their tax base, and now they don't have enough revenue to maintain their roads. So they are literally allowing some of their paved roads to go back to dirt because they do not have enough revenue to drive a program like we have here and stuff. So that's having that balance is really critical to being able to keep these guys with enough revenue to do what they do.
Yeah, one more thing on chip seal too. It is essentially our perpetual paving system for the vast majority of our road system. If we stay on, depending on the roadway, an 8 to 13 year cycle of chip sealing, we never have to go back and reconstruct them, which is, in most cases, rurally in particular, prohibitively expensive. So it's a really important tool in our toolbox, and our crews are really phenomenal at it. They've been doing it for decades, and between the equipment and the crews that specialize in that work, they do a really good good job. It's kind of fun to watch too. It's a really fast process if you ever go watch it in the summer. Our window's only 4 to 6 weeks typically in June and July, and they just really go down the road. So encourage you to go take a look if you ever have the opportunity.
Great comparison between what these guys do and what the city of Spokane does in terms of, you know, if you don't keep that regular interval of resealing that road, it will fall apart and stuff. And that's some of the challenges they have at the city.
Yeah, and just one last thing, a chip seal will not fix any imperfections in the road. So if there's a bump or something like that, you'll feel it right after, because it's a 3/8 inch chip that we're putting on it. Where paving, that's where we can level some stuff out. And you know, and I came to a presentation when I was at the city here, and one thing that they were saying is, even if the road is falling down towards the bottom of the level, still chip seal it, because if you save 75% of the road and you lose 25%, you've still saved that 75%. So, you know, as dollars get tighter, I think this program's gonna probably increase. And we'll probably be doing some stuff that might not last, but that'll be very localized to those bad areas, and then we'll have to worry about fixing those later on. And then the first thing before we do any of the other ones is our crack seal program, which is a good bang for a buck. Again, it's the first line of defense to keep the water out of the roads. And we do it with one permanent guy. We promote a seasonal foreman, and then he does it with a whole bunch of summer help. And we like to get that crew up to about 10 summer help. Right now, I think that crew's sitting at 6. So, and they're just getting rolling, and we'll probably start on some residential streets first until we can get on the full crew size and get out onto the arterials. So
I will say, I am amazed at how many people request the crack seal. And I mean, for most of the year, I drive a pickup to where I wouldn't even feel any of these cracks, but people will say, you know, can we please get that, you know, get these cracks filled? So I mean, it's something that when it happens, I mean, people are very happy when we come through their neighborhoods and fill in these cracks.
And in some of the neighborhoods we've used on these wide cracks, crack sealing doesn't work. We've used what's called a mastic. That is very labor intensive. It's a rubberized material that has rock in it. And so you put it into this machine that heats it up, but then you have to drop it into this little cart that basically, or you drop it in and you push it with a tool, and it's labor intensive, but it does work well on these white cracks in the neighborhood. So we do that every couple of years. We'll pick a neighborhood or two and try to do that. But this crack sealing, it squirts right out of a machine, and then they squeegee it in place. And again, keeping the water out of the road bed is the key to all of this stuff that we're doing. The next slide is just, it shows where we're going to re-gravel, and it's going to show where we have our gravel road stabilization projects. And so that's our plan for this year. And I guess one thing I should have said at the get-go, this is all draft. Why I say it's draft is we really don't know till all that frost comes out of our road is how the roads held up in the winter. Now, they held up a lot better than I thought this year with the deep frost we had. We had some pretty serious frost heaves in areas I haven't seen before, but it looks like it's all settling back down and we're not getting too much damage. But if we do have damage, then we have to go to what we call our PR&R crew, which is our basically, they do small fixes, 50 to a couple hundred feet, where they might have to dig out and do subgrade repair. The more of that we have to do, the more of these programs do get cut back. So this is draft, but it's looking like it's a pretty good program with what we got from Mother Nature. And then the next slide is our overlay and chip seal around the county. And overlay will start around the 1st of May and chip seal will start around the 1st of June. Crack seal crew, they're getting started this week. And then the next slide that we threw in is just our construction program that Matt can talk about a little bit.
Yeah, and obviously this is too hard to read, but visually you can kind of just see where around the county the projects are proposed for this year. And several of them are inlay overlay projects. You can see Columbia Drive, the second project in the Northwood area that's going to be completed this year. Wheeler, which is way in the southeast corner of the county, is an arterial down there. We're doing a CTV overlay. Brooks Road, phase 1's gonna go this year. Lincoln, we've already bid and awarded. That will go this year from Crestline to Market. 57th Avenue, we did the western portion a couple years back, and we're gonna do the east portion, basically including the Regal intersection. So that'll be a one with a lot of traffic control, but that'll go from there over to Glen Rose. And also Freya, from the roundabouts at the NSC up to Market Street. And finally Midway, which is kind of a joint project with Whitworth Water District to redo Midway Road. And then in addition, obviously, we have Euclid Road Bridge going this year. We have another Little Spokane Road Bridge that'll go probably just bid this year and be built next year. And also our really big one for this year, Bigelow Gulch, the last phase of that. So that bid's this Wednesday. We're very anxious to see the bids. We've been getting back some very large bids, so we may need to look at adjusting our program to accommodate that depending on how our bids come back. So more on that. And then Craig Road, the Craig Thorpe intersection improvements that I believe you heard from the airport board earlier on regarding the right of way. Once we get that right of way, we can finalize design and get that out too. Then also we have the ongoing West Terrace stormwater projects. We'll wrap up the phase that we awarded last year and partially built, and then go into the second phase and get as much of that done this year as possible. And that's kind of a high level look at the 2023 construction program. I'm happy to share more information or a separate briefing later if the board wanted it. Just wanted to give you a quick look now, because we'll start getting into the roads, and I imagine that'll generate phone calls for everybody.
What?
Yeah, never happened, would it, Ron?
Don't worry, nowhere near as many as the city will get, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting me come over. Does anyone have any questions? No. If you'd like a tour of any of our programs, just let us know, and we'll pick a nice day and get out and look at what our crews are doing. So just let me know and we can get that coordinated. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. All right, and we are approaching a hard stop at 11:30, so I will ask Jeff, how quick is yours?
I can do it in 3 minutes.
Okay, perfect. There we go.
So the No Shooting Advisory Committee is the last of the ones that we all switched out. You all switched out for going from 3 to 5 commissioners, just restructuring of the committees. It'll be on your consent agenda next Tuesday. It'll be the same 7 members that are before you. 3 of them are midterm, so they're just being switched out from representing a specific district to at-large, because by way of reminder, all of these committee members will be at-large. The other 4, their terms had expired over the past 9 months. One of them last June, one in December, one in January, one in February. Those 4 have all requested to be reapproved. This committee has had nothing before it in at least 3 years. So it is not a high volume committee, and it did take us a while to get in touch with everybody to get their information in, but it is all here ready to go.
Any questions? Okay.
Do it in 90 seconds.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Okay, so Ashley, can we ask you to come back this afternoon to present to us?
Yep, that works.
Okay.
Read this afternoon or read tomorrow afternoon?
No, we're to this afternoon. Scott Chesney's coming in to present at 2 o'clock, the 2023 comprehensive plan amendment briefings. Gino is saying that could be like an hour and a half. That's what he's asked for, so.
I was confused because one says Monday and the other one says April 11th. I think tomorrow's April 11th, isn't it?
Is he queued up for this afternoon or tomorrow?
2 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay, so it is today.
Okay.
Monday was right, they should have been April 10th.
All right.
Okay. All right, and so we will kick the miscellaneous to this afternoon as well. Okay, I guess I'm not 100% sure. Are we adjourning this or are we continuing?
Continuing.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, so we will be back at 2 o'clock. That's when we will continue this meeting till. So we are essentially on break until 2 p.m. this afternoon.